Hey there, good afternoon. My name is Megan, and I'm a student too. Even though I am an adult, I am going back to school to learn how to be a teacher. So I want to thank you for your time and for letting me do this reading lesson with you today. First of all, I wanted to go over some rules we do before we read. I know that you probably have a teacher who does all these wonderful things and gets you guys ready for a read aloud. But I wanted to go over something with you that I had a lot of time to think about. What good readers do. Good readers read with their eyes. Obviously, we're going to see the book. We're going to look at the words, and we're going to look at the illustrations, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. We also read with our ears. So we are practicing good listening skills, and we're listening for words that we know, and we're listening for words that we don't know and that we might need to ask questions about. And we also read with our head and our heart. It means that we think about the things that we're reading, and then we kind of take them in to our heart and see how they feel and talk about what we're reading, how it feels, if it makes us happy or sad or some other emotion. Books are really a good way to express how you feel or to learn about how other people feel and how other cultures do things. So these are things that I like to talk about before we read out loud. All right. The book that I have today kind of goes with my outfit. I don't normally wear a hat or plaid shirt, but I do when we're talking about Curious George, and specifically, Curious George goes to a costume party. So this is my farmer costume. This particular book is called A Treasury of Curious George, and it has 8 different Curious George stories in it. Curious George was created by a couple, Margaret and H.A. Ray. They did not do all the illustrations in the book, however. Some of them were done by a person whose name we're going to go over in just a moment. This kind of book that is a collection of stories by the same author, sometimes with the same character, other times not. It's called an anthology. I don't know if that's a word that you guys have gone over in class yet. Anthology. Anthology is another way of saying a collection of stories or a treasury of stories. And especially if you like a particular author or like particular characters, an anthology is a fun way to have all of those books in one big collection. So this is the cover page, or I should say the cover of the book. This happens to be a hardbound book. I know some of Curious George books are in softer cover books. This is the spine of the book, and on the spine you'll find the title of the book as well as the author or authors and illustrators. This is the back of the book, and on this particular book, because there's more than one story, this is a smaller version of the table of contents that we will see later. So this tells you the titles of each of the stories that are found in this book. And this paragraph up here is just a summary of what Curious George has meant to a lot of children over the years, that he's been very entertaining and a beloved character. This is your title page, A Treasury of Curious George. That is also a title page, and this information is about the copyright and about where you can find this book in the Library of Congress, which is the biggest library in the United States. It also has information about the publisher and some other technical information. I'm not going to go over that today, but that's usually found in a book either at the very beginning or the very end. And this is the table of contents. This has a title of each of the stories that are found in this book, plus a small illustration that gives you a quick idea of what that story might be talking about. And this is the story that we're going to be reading today. And what do you see here? Yep, a pumpkin. Or more specifically, a jack-o'-lantern. So here's the title cover page or title page for the book, for this particular book. Curious George goes to a costume party. And the person who illustrated this, it says illustrated in the style of H.A. Ray by Martha Weston. This is George. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. One day, George and his friend, the man with the yellow hat, were on their way to a party at Mrs. Gray's house. That looks like a good place for a costume party. George could not wait. He liked parties, and he was looking forward to seeing Mrs. Gray. But when the door opened, George did not see Mrs. Gray at all. He saw a witch. "Don't be afraid, George," said the man with the yellow hat. "This witch is our friend." The witch took off her mask. It was Mrs. Gray after all. "Oh dear," she said, "did I forget to tell you this was a costume party?" George had never been to a costume party before. Inside, he saw more people that he knew. They were all wearing costumes. There was his friend Betsy, dressed up like an astronaut. And was that Bill? Why, he looked just like a mummy. George wanted to wear a costume too. "I have some dress-up clothes upstairs," said Mrs. Gray. "Would you like to use them to make a costume, George?" Look at that staircase. It's very fancy. Mrs. Gray took George to a room with a big trunk filled with clothes. "Borrow anything you like, George," she said. "I have just the thing for your friend downstairs." George tried on lots of costumes. The first was too big. The second was too small. Another was too silly. And this one was too scary. I wonder if George is going to find a costume that he likes. Let's see. Here we go. At last, George found a costume that was just right. George was a rodeo cowboy. He wore a vest and pants with fringe. He even had a lasso and a hat. If only he could see himself in the mirror. George was curious. Could he see himself if he stood on the bed? No. He needed to jump higher. George bounced on the bed, just a little, but still he couldn't see. What do you guys think is going to happen next? Let's find out. He bounced a little more and a little more. Soon George was having so much fun he forgot all about looking in the mirror. He bounced as high as he could until... Uh-oh. He's going really high up. Crash! George bounced off the bed. He smashed into the night table and got tangled up in the tablecloth. Suddenly, everything went dark. George heard the people downstairs gasp. What was that? Was that a ghost? A ghost? George did not want to meet up with a ghost alone. He dashed out of the room and down the hall. He wanted to get back to his friend in a hurry, and he knew the fastest way. What does George look like now, guys? What do you think? He hopped onto the stair rail and sailed, whoosh, down the stairs. It is a ghost! Someone screamed. Everyone turned. They looked scared and they were looking at George. The ghost must be right behind him. Wow. He must have been going really fast. What do you guys think? I wonder if it would be fun to go down a flight of stairs like that. But very dangerous. Don't do it. George flew off the rail and landed in the arms of a farmer. But this wasn't really a farmer. It was his friend, the man with the yellow hat. Soon everyone stopped looking scared and started to laugh. That's not a ghost. That's a cowboy, laughed a policeman. That's not a cowboy. That's a monkey, giggled a princess. That's not just any monkey, said Betsy. It's Curious George. Everyone clapped and cheered. They liked George's Halloween trick. He stopped the whole party. You gave us a good scare, George, said Mrs. Gray, and I'm glad to see you found some interesting costumes. Now why don't I take your ghost outfit so you can join the party? After the guests bobbed for apples, lit jack-o'-lanterns, and played some party games, prizes for the best costumes were handed out. Are these things that you guys have ever done at parties? This one right here kind of looks like pin the tail on the donkey, except you're pinning features onto a jack-o'-lantern. See what the clown has over his eyes? It's a blindfold, so it makes it really hard to pin things on the image that that go where they're supposed to go. That's what makes that game fun. There was one prize for Betsy, and one for Bill, and 2 for Curious George. You were the best ghost and the best cowboy, George, said Mrs. Gray. Look at those prizes. What do you think those prizes are? They look pretty happy. Everybody looks pretty happy to have those prizes, though. It's pretty cool. Everyone had a good time at the party, especially George. Too soon it was time to say goodbye. Good night, George. Happy Halloween. Okay. So when I was thinking about doing this video and thinking about that story in particular, I had a couple of ideas for questions for discussion. The first question is, what will you be for Halloween? I know that my boys have been thinking about Halloween costumes for months and months, and now that we're getting close to Halloween, we're really starting to get the details down on their costumes. So what are things that you're thinking about being, or have you already decided what you want to do? That's a really fun thing to do this time of year. And I know last year everyone was kind of nervous about going to Halloween and doing Halloween around their neighborhoods and school and things like that. And so I don't know how it will be this year, but if you guys go trick-or-treating, how will you dress up? And my second question is, why did you choose that costume? It could be something really simple, like it's my favorite thing in the whole wide world, or maybe it's just a costume that you had around the house and it's something that you fit in this year and you want to go, or it could be totally different reasons. So I'd love to know what made you decide that particular costume for this year. Or maybe you haven't decided yet, but you have some ideas, some different ideas, and that would be fun to talk about too. The third question is, what costumes do you see every day? And I don't mean like just things you might see on TV or on a computer or tablet or something like that. Like, when I think about costumes, I think about what people do when they have on a costume. And in some ways, some people who work a job, they have to wear a uniform. And a uniform is a kind of costume, I think. And so what are people that you see day in and day out? They could be kids, or they could be adults who wear a special kind of costume or uniform. And what are those people doing when they're wearing those costumes or uniforms? And then my fourth question is, what do costumes do for people? And what I mean is, when we go out for trick-or-treating and we're wearing a costume, we behave differently than we do on a normal day, right? Like normally you don't just knock on people's doors and say trick or treat. So there's kind of a set of rules that go with wearing a costume on Halloween. So during your day-to-day, when you see people wearing a uniform or a costume, why are they wearing that uniform or costume? What are special rules that they have to follow or that you expect that they're going to follow when they're wearing that special outfit? And then just talk, I'd love to hear, or I wish I were going to be there really, but I would love to know like what kinds of things you come up with, and what types of special outfits do you think might be fun to wear other than on Halloween? I mean, what kinds of jobs have costumes that you think, wow, that could be fun? And why would you think that was fun? Anyway, I'm so glad I had a chance to do this video and share that book with you. I hope that someday I get to meet you in person as a teacher or as a student observing you guys. And I want to just say thanks again so much. Have a great day, and if I don't get to see or talk to you,